as a young adult, I've always wondered about the meaning of our existence. What's the purpose of it? Why are we here? Why were we born? What's our destiny? These were always questions on my mind. Then two sets of circumstances really set me on a path that eventually led to spirituality. The first was when I joined the University of Birmingham in the UK as a first-year undergraduate in electrical engineering. The chairman of the department at the time, he used to meet with students from overseas. There were about 10 of us on Wednesday afternoons to talk about science in general, especially modern physics, cosmology, biology, from an integrated philosophical and engineering point of view. And that really opened my mind, that there was a unity to it all, that borders were artificial, and that one should not be restricted in one's worldview, but should keep a mind open and broaden one's horizon as much as one can. So that set me reading and thinking about philosophy, psychology, and religion, even as a first-year undergraduate. Then, when I did my PhD, I was fortunate to have as a PhD advisor Sir John Eccles, who was a Nobel laureate. He was a Roman Catholic and a dualist. By dualist is meant that is the belief that the mind and the brain are separate entities. So he held very strong views about that. He believed in the soul and in spiritual life and all that. In fact, in one of his books, he describes the materialist view that it's all a matter of just physics, chemistry, and interaction between the neurons in the brain. He described it as superstition. So interacting with him really left a deep impression on me. And then, of course, after that, I continued in my thinking, in my reading about religion, philosophy, the purpose and meaning of life, and I've kept that all along. So eventually, when during my career at AUB, I had I held several administrative positions, mainly as Dean of the Faculty of Engineering and Architecture for a long time, about 13 and a half years, during which I had the opportunity to introduce many new programs, academic programs, that really opened up new career paths for thousands of young men and women. Well, that was highly gratifying. But it always left the nagging thought as to for what purpose that our students toil very hard for 4 or 5 years learning about engineering, and then for what purpose in life? Is it to make money, to have an affluent life, to be happy in some form or other, or what? Well, of course, I could not guide them in a spiritual way, because that was not the atmosphere for it. However, I felt eventually that I really had, as an educator, I really had to express my own ideas and opinions about the purpose and meaning of life. And that's what really got me to write this book on spirituality. I had written 4 technical books on electric circuits, electronics, and neurophysiology and neuroscience. But I felt I had to simply express in a simple way what I believe are the most rational, convincing, and satisfying answers to this existential question: what is the purpose and meaning of our life? Eventually, the outcome, the practical outcome, are the tremendous psychological benefits that result from embracing spirituality. And I can briefly mention the broad categories of these benefits, and then we can talk more about them if you like. The first one is the conquering of negative feelings, such as, for example, feelings of envy and of anger. These are highly detrimental negative feelings that are conquered by spirituality. Two, the alleviation of stress and anxiety. And we know that stress and anxiety are the banes of modern living, and that they have very detrimental health effects. So the alleviation of stress and anxiety are extremely important for our well-being. Three, the fostering of positive feelings and attitudes in, for example, feeling in tolerance, understanding, compassion, empathy towards others, being kind and gracious towards others, trying to do good all the time. That really is again a very healthy and positive attitude that has a major impact on one's health and well-being. Four, experiencing the joy of living, the true joy of living, without craving and greed. You see, craving and greed, they really spoil the joy of living. One would have no joy, because no matter what one gets, wants more. He wants more. It's never enough. So we have therefore an experience of the joy of living without craving and greed, without excessive indulgence, with moderation, without excessive indulgence, and without anxiety about the ending of life's pleasures, because many people feel an anxiety that whatever good I have, whatever is now making me happy, might end. But with spirituality, one does not get that feeling at all. So we have therefore the lack of anxiety about the ending of life's pleasures, and also a liberating awareness of what is really important in life and what is vain, superfluous, and illusory. And last but not least is an elating spirituality that is reflected in an intense feeling of closeness and connectedness to God, that engenders profound serenity and self-fulfillment. And I really cannot emphasize this strongly enough, because with reliance on God and deference to His will, one would fear nothing and would fear no one. One would consider life as but a game, with its ups and downs, to be played as best as one can, without apprehension, and without losing sight of its ultimate purpose and meaning. One would tolerantly accept whatever comes, not regretting what was lost and not overjoying about what was gained. Life's challenges become stepping stones on the path of self-development instead of being stumbling blocks. I cannot really describe the immense feeling of contentment and serenity when you feel that you are being guided and cared for by the all-compassionate, the all-loving, the all-wise, the all-just, and the omnipotent. I mean, what more can one ask for? Well, let me explain first of all that I am by nature a workaholic. Both my father and mother were workaholics, so no wonder I was born to be a workaholic. The writing of this book, the actual process of writing the book was very short. To the surprise of my wife, the books, the technical books that I used to write took me about 3 or 4 years per book. But this one I wrote in maybe about 8 months or so. But the reason, of course, is that it's something that I've been thinking about all my life. So I had the material, and all I had to do is just put it in so many words, and that did not take long. Now, that did not really break up my routine in any particular way. I divide my time between work, between exercise, between socializing, and family affairs, and all that. In fact, it did not put any strain on me at all. I felt rather relaxed all the time. On the average, I would spend maybe 3 hours every day writing, and I do that usually in the evening, just after getting through the day's activities, more or less. So it was not really a burden at all. It did not stress me in any way. Quite the contrary. I felt very happy writing this book. Well, it is what I often tell my students that who are nearing a graduation, and they seek my advice about their career and what they're going to do and that sort of thing. Well, I always tell them that you have to think hard about what you really want to do in life. What's your goal in life? Is it to make money, to live affluently, have a nice home, fancy cars, fancy clothing, be happy, spend money all the time and on things that you don't really need? What is your goal in life? It is very important that you think about it. You think hard about it, and you try to find your own answers. Because that will have a tremendous impact on your future well-being, your future health, and eventually your future relations with your family, friends, and people around you. You have to have some objective in life, not just drift all the time. As Jack London said, the function of life is not to exist, but to live. So one has to live a life, not just simply exist. So that is what I tell my students when they are ready to graduate and go out into the world, the real world. Well, that's what the book is of course all about. And in the last chapter of the book, there is a kind of a roadmap for spirituality. Now, I have to be clear here. What do I mean by spirituality? Because people may, I mean, there are different understandings of the word spirituality. Some people think of spirituality as just anything non-materialistic. A non-materialistic outlook is a kind of spiritual outlook, which is, of course, partly true. A more restrictive definition of spirituality is that it is a state of being that is predicated on a sense of connection to the supernatural, that is to something greater than ourselves, and that is beyond explanation by natural laws. This is an accepted meaning of spirituality. Now, in the view of the spirituality that is being advocated, the supernatural is identified with God. So therefore, the spirituality that I am talking about here is a state of being that is predicated on a sense of close connection to God. This is what I mean by spirituality. And the book in the last chapter, the book Spirituality Rekindled, in the last chapter, presents a detailed roadmap on how to embrace this spirituality. There are building blocks, first of all, for this spirituality. The first is beliefs. You have to have some foundational beliefs. And these foundational beliefs are the existence of God, the contemplation of his nature, and the belief in the afterlife. So these are the foundational beliefs that one must have to begin with. Then these beliefs will engender feelings. That is, once you appreciate the greatness and the glory of God, then you feel deep humility because there's nothing to compare with the greatness and the glory of God. And this deep humility would make you to want to submit to his will. So these are the feelings that are engendered by the foundational beliefs. Then these feelings will generate thoughts in one's mind, and the thinking here would always be about the remembrance of God in our everyday life, not just in prayer or when we say grace before a meal or something like that. To have that intense feeling of closeness with God, he has to be on your mind more or less all the time, consciously or subconsciously. And there's a lot to think about when it comes to God. One can think, one can glorify him for all that one sees around, all the beauty in the world, all the wonders of the world, all the wonders of creation, the creation of our wonderful conscious self. All these are forms of glorification of God. Then one can feel gratitude, extreme gratitude for all that he has given us in our feelings, in our appreciation of what is of the beauty around us, in the creativity that he has put in humans, uh, in uh, in our health. You see, our physiology is so incredibly complicated that it's a wonder that things don't go wrong all the time. So every time we wake up in the morning feeling refreshed, can move about freely. Uh, uh, we really have and with our insanity and with our sanity intact, we really have a lot to be grateful for. So all these feelings of glorification, of gratitude, of also supplication, that is asking God to guide us, to help us with our problems, to 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 always be with us with whatever we do. Uh, all this would generate sort of a continuous remembrance of God. One can really feel that. You see, sometimes things happen that one would ascribe to chance or to coincidence, but in fact, if you're spiritual, you begin to realize that these are really expressions of God's guidance and caring for you. You really get that feeling, and it's an amazing feeling of serenity and contentment. Then, with these beliefs, feelings, and thoughts, one would have certain attitudes about things. For instance, one would completely one would have full reliance on God. Now, full reliance on God does not mean that you do nothing and you leave everything to God. You say God will take care of it. That's very wrong, and it does not make any sense at all. This is not what we were created for. We were created with abilities to always do the best we can. But then you rely on God after doing the best you can. You rely on God for the outcome, and that is really the outcomes of things are a source of are the source of anxiety. See, when you're undertaking something, for instance, a student taking an exam, or somebody applying to a job, or any kind of task that one is undertaking. Uh, what is really stressful is not the physical effort itself. What is stressful is the anxiety about the outcome of what you're doing. That is the real source of anxiety. But when you do your best and then you leave the rest to God, you're relieved of that anxiety entirely, because you know that things will be what God wants for you, and eventually God is all merciful, and is all compassionate, and is all just. So that is a very important kind of an attitude, to have a true reliance on God. Then there is also the deference to His will. That is, so some people mistakenly think that if they pray for something, then of course God should grant them what they're asking for. Well, this is again a completely wrong attitude. It's not what you wish that will happen. It's what God wishes that will happen. So one has to defer to His will, in the full knowledge that He knows what is best for us, that He is the all merciful, the all compassionate, and the all loving. And that, of course, another kind of attitude is the attitude towards material possessions. Many people just crave material possessions. They want better homes, fancier cars, better clothing, whatever. But if you come to think of it, you see, we really don't own any of our possessions. We are only in temporary custody of it during our lifetime. Because when we die, we don't take anything with us. It's true that we can leave it to our children and grandchildren, but the same applies to them. That is just temporary. It's all temporary custody of our material possessions. So that puts the material aspects of life in a really proper perspective. Then, of course, the same is true of life's pleasures. That is, seeking all kinds of joys and pleasures. That of course is perfectly legitimate as long as you're within the confines of course of what is lawful and what is moral, and as long as you appreciate what is the meaning of the joy of living, and so you enjoy life as it comes. The enjoyment of life is not an escape from something. It is the joy for what life actually is offering us. And one realizes, of course, the frivolity of life eventually, because you see, one has to keep in mind in all this, what is the purpose and what is the meaning of life? The purpose of life, as is emphasized in the book, is that God, in his loving mercy towards humans, he created humans for a purpose, and he endowed them with these amazing mental capacities for a purpose. And the purpose is to achieve eternal bliss in heaven. This is what humans have been created for. However, now God could have made humans just like angels, full of goodness, with no evil and no suffering in life. But then life would have no meaning. So, in fact, God created us with an amazing conscious self that has the propensity for both wickedness and righteousness. And he has given us some free will to choose which path we want to take. The path that leads to eternal bliss in heaven, or the path that leads to suffering in hell. Which means really that life is a trial. Life is a trial for humans to earn the eternal bliss of heaven. How do they learn the eternal bliss of heaven? It is by serving God. How does one serve God? Well, how does a good servant serve his master? By obeying him, and by doing and by seeking his favors. That's how a good servant serves his master. Right? If we are the servants of God, we have to submit to his will, and we also have to seek his mercy. Now, how do we seek his mercy? Because that is the greatest favor. The mercy of God is what will eventually lead to eternal bliss in heaven. So how does one seek God's mercy? It is by being merciful to those around us, because that is a reflection. That would be only a reflection of God's greatest attribute, which is loving mercy. So therefore, what being merciful to others means that we have to express it in conduct, in words, in gracious behavior towards others. That is what it means to be merciful to others, and that is being uh, serving God at the same time. Now, uh, how do we get into this state of being merciful to others? It is through the spirituality which is being advocated in the book. This, in my opinion, is the best way to achieve this state, is through the spirituality. So the ultimate, therefore, the ultimate result of these beliefs, feelings, thoughts, and attitudes is conduct. This is what it eventually boils down to: conduct. It's being being doing good to others, charity, forgiveness and humbleness, treatment of others. That is the conduct, which is the practical outcome of the spirituality that I'm talking about. Now, a very important point is that in going through these steps that lead to a high degree of spirituality that I'm talking about, we would in fact be developing ourselves in the process. That is, we would be developing spiritually, psychologically, morally, and intellectually. We would be developing ourselves. That is, becoming better human beings all the time. And that is the meaning of life. That's what gives meaning to life. It is this continuous, comprehensive, and extremely fulfilling self-development. So it is within this context that one has to, that one's worldview will center around. It is the purpose of life and the meaning of life. And the practical aspect is the self-development. We should do our utmost to develop ourselves as much as we can along all these lines, whether it is spiritual, psychological, moral, or intellectual.